A good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round 3 of the AROC Racing League's Touring Car Championship for 2025. It is great to be back on your screens, folks. This time we're here at Oulton Park with our Giulietta TCR car. Turbocharged 300 horsepower, front-wheel drive, plenty of fun. Actually quite an approachable car as well. So let's see what our drivers make of it here at Oulton Park. A great venue. We had plenty of fun in the GTA 1750s, as I mentioned last week. So let's see what the Giuliettas can do. Actually a pretty local track to myself here in Cheshire. Oulton Park opened in 1953, did this venue, so been here for a pretty long time, and I can see why. It is a fantastic track. Plenty of interesting and technical corners to negotiate. We're on board with Colin Knief at the moment with 8 minutes to go in qualifying. There's myself in the camera car. Hello. As you run down towards turn 1, the old Hall right-hander. You want to be as far left as possible as you can be before you dive the car in to that high-speed right-hander, followed by Cascades in just a moment. A really tricky part of the lap, actually. It looks quite simple. You'd think, you know, just put your foot down and head down towards the lowest elevation part of the circuit, but the braking point is very tricky to get right, and Colin Knief has certainly done that so far in this session. 141.054 sees him leading by just under 1/10, as ever. Very close between Colin Knief and Matt Daly, something we've always been accustomed to, and upon Colin's return to the series, that continues on. Colin Knief, as I say, leading with a pretty decent margin, but it is being closed down by Matt Daly on that previous lap. 141.137 actually didn't really improve in sector 2 or sector 3. Made early on in the lap. One of the longer venues we will be visiting in our touring car calendar is Oulton Park on high speed natured circuits, apart from your Silverstones. We pretty much bookend the calendar with that. So we start with Silverstone National, round 1 of course, and then we finish at the Silverstone Grand Prix. If I'm not mistaken, I think I've got that a little bit wrong. Either way, we're here at Oulton Park this evening, and it is an evening for once on track, which is quite a nice thing to shake up the action with. You can see the sun is setting here. It's obviously pitch black out now. It's winter these days, but you get a nice, I think you call it golden hour, really, as we have just over 6 minutes left on the clock. And these two who are so close in qualifying are our closest drivers. Well, they're not close in the championship, but they're squabbling for P1 at the moment. 20 points between them in the championship standings. Colin Knief with a pretty dominating 93 points already. We're only approaching our 3rd round, with Matt Daly with 76. Then there's a 20-point gap down to Greg Young, and again a 20-point gap down to Nathan Birch with 36. It gets very close in the mid-pack, though. As we've seen so far at the first couple of rounds, the mid-pack action is really what has made the differences. Colin Knief gets the back out of shape just a little bit there, heading down through Cascades. Very impressive that he held that together. That will compromise that lap. He's not going to be able to improve the pole with that, but he can at least get some style points. Let's see who else can we have a look at then in this session at the moment. It's getting pretty close, as I say, in that mid-pack in terms of the point standings, but it's a little bit more spread out in terms of qualifying at the moment. We'll go on board with Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews, who's currently heading through towards the end of Sector 1, has Shell Oils, the long sweeping hairpin, to come up in just a moment. Actually, in the GTAs, it turned out to be a bit of an overtaking opportunity if you could nail the outside line there. These cars a little bit more benign, though, than the 1750, I think, so maybe drivers might have a few more interesting places to have a go at trying to find a way past. Andrew Whitehead's just started the lap. I'd like to report with him. 0.9 is currently his best, but we have seen some very impressive times in the past from Mr. Whitehead. In that white and red liveried card there, it actually rhymes with his surname. And it's great to actually be coherent this week as well. Obviously last week I was a zombie pretty much, so I'm looking forward to actually probably getting in to some action here at Oulton Park as the back end kicks out heading into the Shadows corner. He does catch it, does Andrew, but that did compromise his run there. He ends up going a bit too deep into the corner for his liking, I suspect, but he did well to catch it. You can see in the bottom left hand corner the the predicted time rather does, well, it would usually be changing, but it's now decided to break, which is a bit of a theme in my life at the moment. As we have the ominous onlookers there, we saw a quick glance of them just on the outside of the circuit. The marshals don't. Ooh, clatter of the barrier there for Andrew Whitehead. Where was that heading through? The chicane there towards the entrance of Sector 3. That was run through his lobs there for Andrew Whitehead. That's less than ideal. Matt compromised his run. He's still got 4 minutes left, so he'll have plenty of time to get back in the pit, get a fresh set of tyres on it, and head back out on a track. 4 minutes to go then in this session. 11 cars currently out on track. I believe that's all we're looking to have for this one. Yeah, very different circuit indeed to Anglesey that we were at a fortnight ago in these cars. And it changes once again as we head out to Knock Hill in another fortnight in the WTCRs. It'll be very interesting to see how the drivers negotiate that. But here's Colin Keneath currently on for a decent lap here, 141.3. That would see him currently P4 in this session, so he's not getting close to his previous best time. 141.0, still sees him on pole. It is very close between Daly and Keneath. Apologies for the PowerPoint presentation that you appear to be getting. I'll mend that in 1 second. Apologies for the delay there. Let's have a quick run at this towards the end of qualifying now. Hopefully we're all up and running. If not, I'll get it fixed in between qualifying and the race. But in case it's a radio show, here's your rundown there. We have 40 seconds left on the clock. Matt Daly has found a way ahead of Colin Keneath with a very impressive 140.86. I have found out the issue, by the way. It's I've told it what quality to aim for, but it's apparently trying to stream at like 50 megabits a second. I'll fix that in between the race and enjoy your radio show for the end of qualifying then. That's all we wrote really for Nathan Birch, Miles Davis, Paul Millman, and nearly said myself then. But they're all the drivers who can't get another lap in this session. We'll go on board with who have we got left to come across line. It'll be Colin Keneath up first. Colin Keneath is heading through the final corner now. Up the hill we go, over the deer leap, and abandons the lap, does Colin Keneath. Then we are going to have Matt Daly also diving into the pits. I think we're going to have a bit of a theme here. We'll catch you in just a few minutes as we get ready for race one. I was about to say you joined us on the grid, but the camera's just decided to change. We get to look at me again. Hello. Oh, now we're in car with Matt Daly. Great. You join us on the grid then, ready for race 1 here at Oulton Park. I'm going to bring us live a little bit early, just to make up for the fact that qualifying was less than ideal. But here we go. It's Matt Daly and Colin Knief with a late charge from Matt Daly. Saw him a tug pole away from Colin Knief, who held it for pretty much the entire qualifying session, but just at the end there, Matt Daly, in typical Matt Daly fashion, just pulls out a blistering lap very late in the run. So it's Matt Daly and Colin Knief. Then we have Greg Young and Nathan Birch, 2 teammates for the 939 Corsa squad there in the contrasting liveries. Both going to be fighting it out as we run through Old Hall. That could be an interesting one to watch out. They seem to have been pretty good at not making contact with each other, but we could see that happening in just a few moments. Then we have Alan Matthews, P5, and then a driver who I think might be a little bit out of place here. We've got Andrew Whitehead running in P6 on the start of this race. If he doesn't progress early on, could bode well for the reverse grid race after. But if he does, as we have seen plenty of times, watch out for Andrew Whitehead in the fight in this race. He could make things very interesting. Miles Davis, rookie this year, of course, has already impressed us with quite a number of results. Hasn't got that podium yet, but has had multiple P4s, so he's not far away from it at all. Then we have Jack Hodson, Andy Webb, Paul Millman, Steve Knight completing our 11-car grid for our first race here at Oulton Park this evening. Looking at previous form then in the championship, it's Colin Knief who has taken the top step of the podium in most races, with Matt Daly being the only driver to take him away from that in the second race at Silverstone, who is going to be this time out. We haven't seen any big Matt Daly Colin Knief clashes. We don't really see them that often, but when they do happen, they usually have a pretty big impact on the championship. So with just over 30 seconds to go until lights out now, let's see what our drivers make of it. I can hear the revs rising already as drivers begin to get ready for the launch. A tricky car to get off the line is this one. It's turbocharged, it's front-wheel drive, and it's quite easy to bog down if you haven't got the clutch absolutely perfect off the line here. So let's see who does a good job of that. Right on board with Matt Daly at the moment. And now on board with me. Camera system this year really isn't a massive fan of actually looking at the action we want to see. There we go, just in the nick of time. 10 seconds now until the lights go green, the revs rise, and we have 6 red lights on the gantry. We are away for race 1 here at Oulton Park. It's a good start from everyone in the field. A bit of wheel spin for Matt Daly there, but Colin Knief looking pretty equal with him. Greg Young goes pretty aggressive in to the right-hander of Old Hall. Nathan Birch still side by side with him though as we continue on to Cascades in just a moment. Colin Knief then right on the rear diffuser of the Giulietta WTCR in front of him. Actually a little bit of contact between himself and Matt Daly. That slows his progress ever so slightly. Matt Daly unfazed by it though. Cracking stuff from our race leader here as here comes Andrew Whitehead side by side, bashing doors. That's what you want to see from touring cars. Bashing doors with Nathan Birch, that was actually. As we see him now head into the Shell Oils corner, our leaders, our top 4, all making it through pretty cleanly. Nathan Birch having a look down the inside on his teammate there. That could get messy, and this is Jack Hodson. Jack Hodson having a very unfortunate start to this race and down in P11 at Shell Oils. Let's go back to the front end of the pack then as we run through Britain's. And you climb up the elevation for the first time on the lap. It's Matt Daly who leads us with 7/10 of a second, another 7/10 gap down to Greg Young. And through the chicane of his laps, we already saw Andrew Whitehead in qualifying full foul of the tyre barrier there as Matt Daly gets up onto 3 wheels. We climb our way up through the Clay Hill and into Druids in just a moment. Druids was an opportunity on the track that the drivers really enjoyed taking to get an overtake done during the races with the GTA 1750 last week, and I'm sure we're going to see a similar thing in our Giuliettas this time out as well. The Lodge corner comes up next as we get ready to complete our first lap of this first race of the evening. Colin Knief very much keeping Matt Daly honest as we head through the Deer Leap in just a moment, but it must be said some of our closest action isn't at the top end of the field. We go on board with the National Tyres liveried car here, and it's Miles Davis versus Andy Webb. Our 2 rookies this year have very much enjoyed each other's company out on track so far this season, and we're going to see it again here at Oulton Park. The yellow livery car wins out so far. I'd have to say has had slightly better fortunes overall so far this season, and it looks to continue on as we head into the first race here at Oulton Park this evening. Half a second though is the gap between Matt Daly and Colin Knief. Let's see if Colin can close it up to make it even smaller still. It is very impressive, I must say, of Matt Daly too. He always does this. It's actually quite surprising that he's present for the entire qualifying session here at Oulton Park this evening. Often what we see from Matt Daly is he'll sit in practice, disappear because he has actual important real-life stuff to do, and then we'll just come in with 3 minutes to go in the session and just post a blistering time. And is right on form for the race as well. I think he's taking qualifying perhaps a little bit more seriously now that there is a certain orange, black and white liveried car here racing with us this season once more. Still half a second is that gap though, and I think that could go on for a little while. Let's have a little look further back here. Greg Young, Nathan Birch, Andrew White and Alan Matthews form your quartet that is fighting for the bottom step on the podium. Nail-bitingly close battle that we were seeing between Greg Young and Nathan Birch seems to have resolved ever so slightly now. Nathan Birch is still making sure that the nose is in just the right place so that his teammate knows that he is very much there. As we run through Lodge now, Nathan Birch has a look around the outside, might be going for a tighter run through the apex there. Over the Deer Leap we go, and has a very slight slipstream effect, and I do mean very slight in these cars, but every little helps, especially when you're banging off the rev limiter at some of these higher speed circuits. And in to the Old Hall corner we go, but look at that, it's side by side for Matt Daly and Colin Knief as we head down towards Cascades here. Cascades is a corner that you really want to energise the entry of the corner. You want to make sure that the car's got plenty of momentum, a bit of a Scandi flick almost, as we're still side by side. Colin Knief gets a nose out in front, Matt Daly still side by side. It's going to have the inside here before we run down towards Shell Oils. Long sweeping hairpin here where many an overtake have been completed, and it's going to be Matt Daly who defends the position for now. A slight puff of smoke on the lockup there for the back axle, very common in these Giulietta WTCRs, and it's Matt Daly who wins out this time around. This won't be the last time we see these two battling though. Still around about half a second separated, but here is Greg Young. Greg Young using the narrow sector to his advantage, making sure that Nathan Birch and Andrew Whitehead can't find a way past just yet. And it's 3 seconds off the lead for these three fighting for P3. So that gap has expanded ever so slightly to our race leaders, but I don't think they're too bothered about what's going on out in front. It's pretty much a given that it's going to be Matt Daly and Colin Knief at this point. Greg Young versus Nathan Birch. Greg Young, the slightly more successful out of the two 939 Corsa cars, it must be said, but Nathan Birch has shown flashes of absolutely brilliant pace as we run it down Druids in just a moment. In fact, we head through Druids, and it was a great run for Greg Young there. He gets a really nice exit, keeps the revs high, is able to side on through the gears, and makes a few tenths actually as we run through Lodge in just a moment. This could be a very good opportunity here for Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead, a very experienced sim racer, has a very level head on him. Well, mostly level headed. He's crazy enough to take on helping run the AROC racing leagues, but running in P5 at the moment, and it's probably just going to let Greg Young and Nathan Birch battle it out in front of him. That's what they can burn their tyres up, they can slow themselves down. What Andrew Whitehead really needs to do is probably make sure that Alan Matthews is a decent gap behind, and just let those two slow each other down and breeze on past when he can later into the race if he's looking for a podium. In this round, we will have another look at the championship later on into this race, but for now we're going to stay on board with our race leaders. Half a second is still the gap between Matt Daly and Colin Knief. We might go on board with one of our front running. I'll try that again. One of our front running drivers for a lap here to have a bit of a glimpse as to what a quick lap here at Oulton Park does look like. The gap closing up though as we head through Hislops. Under braking, that was Colin Knief a little bit later on the brakes, and this is one of those venues where the braking points, points make a difference at every racing circuit, but they're particularly tricky here at Oulton Park, especially in the car. Prone to the odd lock-up, shall we say, as has been the case for arguably both of our cars this year, but it's less than half a second now is the gap between Colin Knief and Matt Daly. Plenty of smoke there as we run through Druids. That's hopefully just tyres and brakes. I mean, I've been no stranger to engine smoke over the past couple of days, but maybe these Juliets might be demonstrating some as well. As we head over the Deer Leap, it's still 2 tenths. Hello. Nice. I'm enjoying this, just having a little cameo on the start-finish straight as we see Matt Daly nearly lost out on the race lead as we head into the Old Hall corner, defending through the inside there, nearly finds himself on the grass, but washes out wide and uses that to kind of defend the position and say, Colin Knief, this Giulietta is very wide, you're not finding way past just yet. 8 minutes into this race, we are now as they run through Cascades. It's so tricky in a car that wants to understeer his Cascades because you're going to find yourself washing out wide. And this is an old school circuit. There's no tarmac runoff. It's straight onto the grass if you get it wrong. And we saw a little bit of that in qualifying. We haven't seen any of that yet in the race. Everyone keeping the nose pretty clean, it must be said. We see a couple of back mark. As soon as I say that, as soon as I say everyone keeping the nose clean, Nathan Birch and Greg Young making contact into Shell Oils. They're both pointing in the right direction, though. That is the main thing as we head through Britain's first, climb up the hill, then you've got another chicane, and then you run back down towards the end. Make it sound so simple. Not that I could do any of this. I haven't attempted Oulton Park in a very long time. It's probably for a good reason. The marshals looking onwards will be very important to look on there, and that is a touring car line if ever I've seen it. Colin Knief there uses the grass to its full advantage, making sure that the car works on both grass and tarmac. Very important to do, as we have 16 minutes left in this race. It's a sprint race, so you don't have to look after the car all that much. We are running on the soft compound tyre, as we are for every venue this year, this season. The tyres will drop off towards the end of the race, but they are most definitely the quickest. The quickest way to win the race is to just have dead tyres towards the end. There's no point jumping onto the mediums. Sorry, Paul. I've just noticed Paul Millman has jumped onto the mediums for this race. Well, maybe it will work. We shall see. Currently P9 Paul Millman, but who knows? Paul Millman podium, I'm here for it. Either way, 16 minutes left on the clock, and we still got 0.4 of a second between these two drivers. I think you could probably pause and then come back to the action, and it will still be the same. It might have swapped around, but these two are going to be very close for quite some time in this race. Speaking of drivers that are very close, let's look a little bit further behind as we see Paul Millman and Jack Hodson. Jack Hodson we saw spun around at Shell Oils on lap 1, making a bit of a recovery and using, I'm not even going to call that touring car, that's full an Indy car at that point, using the scenery available to him to carry some speed through Shell Oils. And into P9 goes Jack Hodson, using those softs then. About 10 minutes into this race, probably still got a slight advantage compared to the mediums. And it's Jack ahead of Paul Millman, squabbling 4 points. We've got slightly fewer drivers than we've had over the past couple of rounds, so pretty much everyone's going to be getting at least 1 point in this race. Still, as I say, it's very close in that mid-pack, so every point does matter. It's what we've seen over even some of the quieter seasons. For example, the start of 2025 last season, even in the really quiet championships, because everyone was taking points off each other, it all came down to that final race. It always does. It's formatted very nice like that. So thank you, drop scores. Very helpful indeed, as we have 0.8 of a second. Separating our two leaders, a little bit less separating the 939 Corsa cars, and there's some pretty consistent gaps elsewhere throughout the pack. With Matt. Hey, no, we'll stay on board with Greg Young. We'll stay on board with Greg Young as we run through a full lap here at Oulton Park. So you head in to the Old Hall right-hander. Again, in the braking zone that you've really got to nail. You've got to carry that momentum down towards Denton Cascades in just a moment. It's all about nailing the apexes, making sure that you aim for those curbs properly without washing out onto that aforementioned grass. Use as much of the curb as you dare, pretty much, as the game. Here at Oulton Park, then we run through Denton Cascades as we have. Tricky braking point, but you can get it right, and then you've got it's definitely a notable bend, but it's not too major of a bend before you head into Shell Oils. It's very, very steeply cambered. It's like a bowl, as you can see, pretty much. Watch out for your braking point once more before you need to unwind the wheel pretty much as quickly as possible to get on the power before you run up the hill. These cars are a little bit less power sensitive, I suppose, than the GTA 1750s we were in last week. You've got the turbocharger, you've got full power, they can pick up steam pretty well, but those GTAs, where it's all about climbing on cam and keeping the revs high, keeping that momentum built, it's very tricky indeed to keep the power up, to keep the speed up, whilst also keeping the chassis in check, because as we've seen, it's a fun car, but it's not the most capable racing machine, but it is a sight to car, GTA 1750. Then you run through Britain, as we did, that chicane, run up the hill, got another chicane in the form of Hislops, then you run through the two right-handers towards the end of the lap into sector 3. Tricky braking zone once again in to Dribbit, but a real overtaking opportunity before you head down through Lodge. We did actually see a move around the outside of Lodge in the previous week's racing. Run up the deer loop and you complete the lap. Thank you very much, Greg Young, for giving us an interesting demonstration there, as we have 30 minutes left on the clock, just about to hit half race distance. Let's have a look at our championship. Let's have a look at how things are shaping up, as Nathan Birch is once again making sure that all the scenery is intact. Not a given here at Oulton Park, as we've seen in the past. Sometimes you'll drive a car over it and you'll teleport into the 5th dimension, but that hasn't appeared yet. And this will be the last time we're at Oulton Park for at least 6 or so months. So we're good for another year. We're good for 2025 at least. 12.5 minutes then on the clock. Your championship is looking like Colin Knief leading us pretty impressively with 93 points, followed by Matt Daly on 76. It's Greg Young in third with 56. Then we have Nathan Birch in fourth with 36. It's Andrew Whitehead then, who hasn't progressed through the field as much as I thought he might have done. We'll have a look at that in a moment. Currently running P5 in the standings, P5 in this race. With 25 points, then we have John Cole, not here this evening. He's on 24 points, so will lose out. Likes of Alan Matthews, Miles Davis, and Mike Hilton, who's also not here actually. So Alan Matthews and Miles Davis, who are just a couple of points behind. Then we have Jack Hodds, Andy Craker, Andy Webb, Paul Millman, and then we have Alex Smith rounding out the championship standings for this race season so far. Seeing that gap between Matt Daly and Colin Knief beginning to expand ever so slightly now. Don't know what they're doing in terms of setup. They'll be doing something different, that's for sure. But that last lap for Matt Daly, 141.0. Colin Knief, 141.2. Best laps overall, Colin Knief at 141.1, and then Matt Daly at 141.0. So it's really, really close margins between these two drivers, but there is a very slight difference. As I say that, Colin Knief, new fastest lap of the race so far for him. And new fastest lap so far of the race, no, not overall, but new fastest lap of the race so far for Colin Knief. He does close up ever so slightly on the yellow liveried car in front. And washes out a little bit more through Cascades. As you say, you've got to aim for the wide part of those curves. You've got to make sure you use as much of the track as possible. As we do now have 10 minutes left to go in this race. That's pretty big from Colin Knief. 2.9 seconds, 4 seconds is now the gap, and actually loses out to Greg Young. Just getting it ever so slightly wrong there, running through the hairpin of his lops, not the hairpin, the chicane of his lops, and that is, sorry, Britain's. Try to be less confused. Yeah, Greg Young into second and Colin Knief into third. 10 minutes left to go on this race, then I'd say that Nathan Birch might not be within a shout of closing up. The battle is very much on between Greg Young and Colin Knief. First couple of corners, Colin Knief is going to have a few issues with grass on the tyres, a bit of rubbish collected on the tyres. That will have cleaned up by now, though, and now he can focus on putting pressure on Greg Young. This will be interesting to see then what Colin Knief's racecraft is looking like compared to another rival. He knows how to battle Matt Daly very well indeed. He's run up the deal. He's already closed up substantially, and on to the start-finish straight we go. 4 tenths per second is your gap as we run it down towards the Old Hall. In terms of Greg Young's best lap was a 141.3, only 2 tenths of a second separating them overall in terms of absolute pace. Nice running from Greg Young in P3. Through Cascades we go, and Greg Young still has the measure. One benefit of running at Oulton Park, if you're on the defence here, is that you can use the narrow nature of various parts of the circuit to your advantage. This track was designed for your likes of your old Formula 3000s, for your old Cortinas, really small little cars, minis for example, but these Giuliettas with TCRs are comparatively huge. Can't really go any more than 2 cars wide at quite a few points on this track, so Colin Knief is going to have to pick his moment pretty well here to try and find a way past. He has got a decent pace advantage, but one thing to bear in mind is that front wing on that car is going to be damaged. You can see some damage to the front end if you look at headlamp lenses. It actually looks a bit like my Vito's headlamp, crazy, the ribbon. And that will take away a little bit of pace off the front end. He will be scrubbing, he will have a bit of understeer. Underneath him will Colin Knief. It's going to be very tricky indeed to try and find a way past Greg Young, because Greg Young is looking pretty spurred on, it must be said. Has had decent form so far this season. As I say, P3 in the standings is definitely clear of that mid-pack action. He's kind of like your Mercedes in F1. You're not quite squabbling with your mid-pack, but you're also not there with the front runners at the moment. And yeah, but as I say, Greg Young could do well here to keep Colin Knief at bay, and I'm sure Matt Daly is begging for Greg Young to keep Colin Knief behind, because this could be the race that closes up the points gap that is beginning to grow between Matt Daly and Colin Knief. Obviously, this will turn around for the reverse good race coming up in around about 10 minutes' time, as Colin Keith will be poised to be starting slightly further ahead of Matt Daly if the order stays the way that it does at the moment. We've seen anything happen in the final few minutes of any of our races, so I'm sure something could happen still in this one too. You can see Colin Keith starting to have a look at the outside line here, starting to see where he can occupy the mirrors of the car in front of him to try and build that pressure now. Lock up there for Greg Young as we head into Britain's. Luckily, he could straight line that chicane there. I mean, you get close to the tyre barrier, but you can do it. It's the quickest way to head through that chicane, really. So that lock-up didn't really hurt him too much as you run it into Britain's. See, the front end still looking pretty responsive for Colin Keith, all things considered. I've certainly seen these cars look more understeery in the past, that's for sure. As I say that, he runs over the curb, and in fact, he runs into the curb there. This could be a really crucial race for both Matt Daly and Greg Young at this point now. Your top four in this race is your top four in the standings as well, with some slight adjustments. Colin Keith is the driver out of place at the moment. These four, have cleared the rest of the pack to shoot about 10 seconds. Some decent gaps between them. Yeah, just look at that a little bit compared to what we've seen from Colin Keith so far in this race, where it's all looked pretty stable, it's all looked pretty comfortable. He's been trying to keep up with Matt Daly and close down on Matt Daly. This isn't quite the same race for him. That car just looks a little bit less balanced, a little bit less enjoyable to navigate Oulton Park from within. He'll be doing quite a lot of work, will Colin Keith, just to keep the car on the track, just to keep it pointing in the right direction, the tarmac. Greg Young is probably not quite believing himself at the moment. I mean, P3 was already quite impressive, but P2 is looking that little bit better. He's 5 seconds off the pace, 5 seconds down on Matt Daly at the moment. He is pretty much matching Matt Daly in terms of pace overall. Colin Keith is just a little bit slower at the moment. That gap has built to around about 1.1 seconds. I believe Miles Davis had a small issue out on track. He is back underway. Some rear wing damage there for Miles Davis, so he might be having a bit more fun with the back end of the car from some of these corners, but isn't under any real threat. Track is 2 seconds down, and he's a little ways behind Andy Webb. So Andy Webb actually getting the better of Miles Davis as we head into race 2 here at Oulton Park in a few minutes. But we'll go back on board with Greg Young. 0.7 of a second is your margin between these two drivers. The 99 course car now leading us in a P2. Look at the smoke coming out the back coming out the front wheel of Colin Keith's car there. That just goes to show there will be a lack of downforce for the white, orange and black car there. Less than 5 minutes to go on the clock in this race then. On to the start-finish straight we go once more, flying past the pit lane, flying past the camera car, which the 75 of which did actually get it was the Juliet. The Juliet did get a run out at Silverstone when the liveries were a bit messed up and we saw some camera cars out on track, which is the quickest they'll ever travel. I'm not saying that because they don't get driven, I'm saying that because I'm not driving them. 4 minutes left to go then on the clock. 0.6 of a second is your gap, and that has slightly expanded to Matt Daly out in the lead. He's looking pretty comfortable, isn't he? He's enjoying his run out here. I did think it was going to be closer between Colin and Matt, given that Colin did have the measure heading in to qualifying. Yep, Matt Daly turning the weekend around, as is becoming pretty customary, and this will be an important race in our championship standings. If he keeps up this form heading into race 2, it's going to be all up in arms as we head to Knock Hill in a fortnight's time in our TCRs, of course, next week in the GTA 1750s as well. Less than 5 minutes on the clock in this race. I should say, if you're watching along at home, do get your comments in. I do monitor them every now and again, at least when I remember to. So if you have any burning questions, if you'd like to show support for any drivers, if you'd like to make fun of me for turning up in a car that was covered in filler once. Oh, that looks like we're getting a little bit close there between Matt Daly and I believe that is a back marker driver there. I mean, looking at some gates. That is Steve Knight as we head on to the start-finish straight once more. We did get quite close. It was just about a width for a Giulietta. And we run on through the old hall once more with the front wing intact. Hello to Tom watching along, who says, "Wow!" exclamation mark. Thank you, Tom. Either way, Greg Young and Colin Keith looking like they're getting very close indeed, and they are. Look, there, defending the inside is Greg Young. Colin Cleave having a look around the outside as they head into Cascades. Has to relent the position though. Watch out for Nathan Birch, 4 seconds behind. That gap has expanded, but it's a drag race down towards the Shell Oil's corner. It's going to be the outside, and it's contact there for Colin Knief and Greg Young as he sives on through down the inside. Typical touring car move that. Colin's going to say it's on. Greg's going to say, what are you doing, Colin? But it was fun to watch anyway as Greg Young continues on his troubles, running through the Shell Oil's corner, finds himself on the exit of the bowl there. And once you're kind of over that negative camber section, it's so difficult to get it pointing in the right direction and on the tarmac. Greg Young manages to do it though without pointing in the wrong direction, which is the most important thing. And Colin Knief is back into second position. Steve Knight then is a back marker coming up, and this could make a difference in our battle going on for P2 here, because we have seen in the past back markers can often actually contribute to a race result. There are no blue flags here in the AROC Racing League, so it's all up to the overtaking driver to get the move done, cleanly. I say that usually we all know each other. Everyone's very courteous. Usually people will move out of the way and allow the race leaders to continue on the battle. But sometimes it's just not possible, and if you're here at a venue like Oulton Park where it does get pretty narrow, you might be finding that a back marker does get in the way. Luckily, Steve Knight is courteous as ever and always very aware, has allowed the two front-running drivers to work their way past with a little issue. Look, Greg Young's rally cross as he runs through the right-hander on the start of the next lap. Once more, still seeing plenty of smoke pouring out of the orange, white and black liveried car of Colin Knief there, as he is struggling for downforce at this point in the race. I'm sure as we head into reverse grid in just a moment, he is going to be pretty relieved to have a bit more grip, as that's very late on the brakes there for Greg Young, but he makes it work. So fair play, Greg, for keeping the car within the boundaries of the circuit, as we do now have 30 seconds left on the clock in this race. This means we are on the penultimate lap of this race. Where is Matt Daly? Yeah, he's heading into his laps now, so this is the penultimate lap. And we might stay on board with Matt, although we might be looking at Nathan Birch and Andrew Whitehead, who are having a bit of fun running down into his laps, although it seems to have faded away, this battle. It was looking... Oh, that's why. It was Steve Knight. It was a back marker. He wasn't battling. Well, a bit. 0 seconds on the clock then. This is the penultimate lap of this race. We will jump on board with Matt Daly to enjoy a bit of a victory parade lap, because it's well deserved. Impressive running qualifying saw him take pole at the very end of the run, and he had plenty of pressure from Colin Knief early on. Didn't crack under that pressure though, and gets ready to start the final lap of this race. Reminder for those of you who might be unfamiliar, the reverse grid action, which will come up in race 2. That's an interesting line, Matt. I wonder why the lap times are so impressive. We're actually going on a bit of a tour of the Cheshire scenery here with Matt Daly as he runs through Cascades there. Yes, the top 7 are your reverse grid order for the upcoming race. So it will be the driver in 7th, which is currently Andy Webb, who will be starting the reverse grid on pole. Matt Daly, well, I still think we'll get a little bit of action between Colin Knief and Greg Young. They're about a second apart, but might be seeing some fourth again lap. Matt Daly, who runs on through, gets ready to climb the elevation once more. It's Britain's first, and his lop's in just a moment, but it's Matt Daly bringing us home. All things going well. Casey's run out of fuel. Oh, it's the ominous onlookers. There we go. Look at them all staring into... It's so distracting. They're just there, and no matter where the camera pivots, they're just looking at you. Terrifying. It's worse than Silver's GP layout. Running through Magus Beckett, it really gets to you. But as we head up towards Druids in just a moment, it's Matt Daly with little challenge as we head through the final couple of corners. Down towards Druids, an overtaking opportunity that Matt hasn't really needed to use at all in this race then. He doesn't lead the championship, but he leads us home for race 1 here at Oulton Park. A crucial race, though, for his championship fight. Greg Young kept Colin Knief behind for as long as he could, but Colin works his way back up to P2, so the point advantage won't be quite as big, but he heads up the D-Leap once again, onto the start-finish straight for one last time. It's Matt Daly who takes the checkered flag in race 1 with a handbrake for celebration as well. Colin Knief just behind them will be bringing it home. P2 just ahead of Greg Young there, a bit of a drag race to round out the podium. But Greg Young, congratulations for another podium here in the AROC Racing Leagues in 2025. Nathan Birch brings home P4 ahead of Andrew Whitehead, P5. Didn't progress through the field like I suspect he could have. But let's see what he makes of the reverse grid action in just a moment. There you can see, I'm going to call him Dave in his bomber jacket there. Oh, that man had two faces. That's terrifying. Alan Matthews brings it home P6. It'll be Andy Webb finishing ahead of Miles Davis in the end as Miles Davis brings it home in P8. And then we are going to have Jack Cotton and Paul Millman rounding out your top 10 for this race. Steve Knight classified P11 in the end. We've got no victory handbrake turns or donuts so far for race 1, but I know for a fact that Matt Bailey is going to keep those under his belt, ready for race 2 coming up in a few minutes. So, oh, there we go. We got a little bit of a handbrake turn run through his laps. That's what we'd like to see. Thank you very much, Matt Daly. And that'll be these drivers bringing it home and bringing it into the pits. Paul Millman on the mediums in the end then. That didn't quite work out. I suspect he might be trying something different for the reverse grid race coming up in just a few minutes. So we'll catch you for the reverse grid action here at Oulton Park. And welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. We're here ready for race 2, round 3 of the AROC Racing League Touring Car Championship for 2025 here at Oulton Park. It's time for some reverse grid action. Let's have a look at how the grid is formed up then. It is going to be Andy Webb on pole for this one, just ahead of Alan Matthews, that's your front row. Then we have Andrew Whitehead. Watch out for one of our most competitive drivers running on the second row of the grid, followed by Nathan Birch. Then we have Greg Young and Colin Knief. They were enjoying a battle in race 1. This time they're going to have to work their way through the field together in the reverse grid action. Then we have Matt Daly, obviously our race winner, side by side with the other yellow and red liveried car. So that's not going to get confusing, for P7 and P8. Then we've got Jack Hodson Punnell and Steve Knight, your 11 car grid for the reverse grid race here at Oulton Park, as the camera's once again trying to tell me which car it wants to look at. I want to look at Andy Webb as he runs down through Old Hall against Alan Matthews. This is going to be a tricky position to be in on your third ever round to be on pole here at Oulton Park. Let's see how Andy Webb does as the revs begin to rise. Drivers are ready to get away. We have 6 red lights on the gantry, and it's lights out for race 2 here at Oulton Park this evening. Decent start there for Alan Matthews. A really good start for Matt Daly, who's having a look down the inside of Colin Knief already. A little bit of door bashing, but we all make it through. Alan Matthews has to dive to the crash to make sure he can still navigate the corner. And it's Alan Matthews actually into the lead of this race. Now we run through Cascades. There's plenty of train painting going on, and that is a big issue for Alan Matthews. No, sorry, it's not. It's Andrew Whitehead and Nathan Birch. Andrew Whitehead is off and into the gravel. I was just going to say, this is his real opportunity to make amends for race 1. Either way, Andy Webb and Colin Knief are still side by side as we run down towards the Shell's corner. They've had another squabble though. This is chaos at the start of this reverse grid race. That's a really tricky position for Colin Knief to be in. He's right against the barrier. Luckily no one else makes contact with him, but a driver who was going to be gunning for the race lead in both race 1 and race 2 here now finds himself all the way down in a P9. We're going to be treated to a complete recovery drive in this one, folks. Let's see how he does that in a few minutes. But Andy Webb currently in P6, not an ideal start for himself. It's a bit of a pinch point as you run down towards Shell Oil's corner, and I suspect that's what's caught out Colin Knief and Andy Webb. They are going to continue on. They're a little bit further down the order than they would have wanted to have been, though. Alan Matthews still leads us then, half a second ahead of Matt Daly. Matt Daly is the driver who benefits from that substantially. Miles Davis gets a little bit upset as we run down towards Druids there, the back end kicking out on him. I think some of that is netcode, admittedly, but it did look like the car was not the most balanced as Jack Hodson gets up onto 2 wheels there. That's typical touring car stuff, isn't it? As we run down towards Lodge right-hander in just a moment. Greg Young down in P8, not a familiar position for himself. It's not been an ideal reverse grid start for the driver who would have been hoping to have progressed back up to those podium scoring positions that he completed the previous race in. 23 minutes on the clock in this one then, and plenty of action already, so I'm looking forward to what else we make of it as Jack Hodson goes wide on the run up towards Britain. He's able to get back underway, but is a little bit further behind than he would have wanted to have been. We're going to jump on board if possible. The camera's been really good this evening, actually, not just looking at the rear wing as it has done at all the other circuits, and now it's choosing to take a look at the back end of these cars as Andy Webb goes down the inside on Steve Knight up into P5. Nice move, pretty textbook there, saw a gap and went for it, as that is Andy Webb then not really showing how to do it textbook, and heading into the Shadow's corner alongside Colin Knief, the driver he had a little bit of a skirmish with on lap 1. This time it's Colin Knief who's ahead of him now at the Shadow's corner. Nothing really to make of that battle, because I suspect that was more down to Andy Webb's compromised run into Shell there. You can see some damage on the front of his car as well, so I suspect Andy's going to be nursing that car home for 22 minutes. Not an easy feat here at Oulton Park in these cars, which can be pretty tricky once they are, shall we say, in less than good condition. Run up the hill then, and it is going to be Greg Young, your driver, leading this pack, and in fact putting pressure on Steve Knight. Steve Knight's having a great start through this reverse grid race, really capitalised on the misfortunes of other drivers at the start of this race to find themselves in a barrier. He is looking very good here in P5. We've got a bit of a train forming up though. The field is still pretty close, given that we had plenty of chaos at the start of the running. Going to jump on board though with Alan Matthews and Matt Daly as they head down the start-finish straight. It's Matt Daly who has the inside for the right-hander, but loses out to Alan Matthews. That's because Alan Matthews carried plenty of speed and even found some grass there. But Alan Matthews does keep the car out in front, Matt Daly runs in P2, and Miles Davis is doing a good job of keeping that pressure on. He's maybe not matching Matt Daly overall in terms of pace, in terms of overall speed, but is able to use Matt Daly as a bit of a reference. This is a key moment, I suspect, in the championship for Miles Davis to build that confidence in running at the front end of the pack, and also benefit from maybe learning the odd line or two, the odd breaking point of Matt Daly out in front. If you can pick up a bit more experience from a very fast driver indeed, he might benefit there. A little bit further back is Miles now, but that is because Matt Daly is very much putting pressure on Alan Matthews as we head through Britons and climb up the hill once more. It's a good run for Matt Daly, it must be said. Has a look around the outside, but Alan Matthews positioning his car absolutely perfectly on the run into his lops. 0.4 of a second is the gap between Matt Daly and Alan Matthews. Matt Daly closing that up though on the run to Druids in just a moment. Has a look around the outside of the slight left-hand kink, dives over to the other side of the circuit, is pretty much snaking all over the track to try and find a Giulietta-sized gap through Druids here as we crest the last little hill before the Deer Leap and run into the large right-hander in just a second. A little bit of a gap there, potentially opening up for the inside there. That is not going to be a gap that you want to stick an Alfa Romeo into, though. And you run it on to the start-finish straight once. Our top three then, all looking pretty close, all within 1 second. Obviously, our two front runners are going to be slowing themselves down in the midst of this battling, and this will be helping Miles Davis keep up. And actually, Miles follows the two leaders onto the grass once more, as we apparently have reprofiled Old Hall, and everyone's now just going onto the runoff and onto the grass, which is, if everyone's doing it, then it's all pretty fair, isn't it? It's pretty warped logic, but we're going to run with it. Either way, Alan Matthews is still leading us, but is not leading us by much. It's Matt Daly who's all over the rear wing of Giulietta out in front. Into shallow oils we go. How late do you brake is the big question. Alan Matthews brakes very late there, actually opens up the inside as he goes quite deep into the corner, and for a brief moment Matt Daly had a sniff at an overtaking opportunity, but is going to be a little bit too far back because he took a slightly earlier braking point. So if you try to go too late and go down the inside, what you're going to find yourself is implanted in another Giulietta. We have 2/10 then between Alan Matthews and Matt Daly, and it's once again just a game of who can dart across the length or the width of the circuit rather without spinning off and maybe potentially getting a nose out in front. That is what this battle is going to be. Alan Matthews very much has his work cut out for him to defend for another 18 minutes in this race. We'll climb up to the highest elevation points of the circuit once more before we all begin to cascade down towards Cascades, really. It's shallow oil that is the lowest part of the circuit. Cascades is not too far behind. I'm running into the lodge. Once again, our top three then covered by 1 second. Then you have an 8-second gap as there's contact between Alan Matthews and Matt Daly running through the lodge. No major ill effects from that, though, as we get ready to start the next lap. I think that was a flash of the headlights from Matt Daly, who actually has a look down the inside of the Old Hall, decides better of it, and is going to try and follow Alan Matthews through here. They are now just taking that line into the grass there, which is interesting, but it works. 1 second then comes your top three, as I say. 8 seconds is the gap down towards P4, P5 and P6 as Colin Keneath finds a way past Greg Young and into P5 now. A move that he tried to do at the end of race 1, he's now been able to do at the start of race 2. Just look at the understate in Paul Millman's car there. He's on the soft compound tyre this time. Not sure if he has some damage. He's very much struggling to keep that car on the grey stuff in front of us as we go pretty much free wide, running through Cascades. That's not ideal, and it's definitely not ideal now, as it's Paul Millman into the barrier. Colin Keneath, for the second time in this race, finds himself in the Cheshire scenery. It's going to be a race of who can join the track first. Andy Webb's caught up a bit somehow as well. I think there was a little bit of squabbling as all the drivers are trying to avoid that impact, and Andy Webb, just like Colin Keneath, has found himself in the barrier at the same point on track they did on lap 1. A terrible shame for Colin Keneath, for Andy Webb, for Paul Millman there. Their progress in this race pretty much comes to a halt at this point. When all is said and done, 20 seconds down is a decent margin to your race leader, but for 16 minutes, if Colin Keneath was absolutely starting to bang in some blistering laps, he might be able to close up on that upper midfield later on. We shall see. Either way, that does mean that our closest racers now are squabbling for that top step on the podium. It's our entire podium that is battling it out now. 7 tenths of a second is the gap as they run on to the lodge right-hander and get ready to start the next lap. We look on through the fencing here and see that Matt Daly is going to dart towards the inside here. Goes halfway alongside. He is squeezed out though, but very much reacts to it. Is wise in the fact that that is going to end badly. Alan Matthews kind of has to take evading action there. Matt Daly jumps on the brakes and is now under pressure from Miles Davis here. As we run through Cascades, the cars pressing on the suspension there as they carry all that high speed through the left-hander. The amount of camber they are carrying in a natural state, never mind when they are very much under load. We run on down through Shell Oils in just a moment here. Late on the brakes goes Alan Matthews. Once again, he's going too deep into that corner, and that is opening up the inside for Matt Daly. For the first time, Matt Daly is side by side, but it's a great run for Alan Matthews, who's going to have the inside for Britons here. He's able to defend the position when it looked like Matt Daly was finally going to take away the first place running. It's Matt Daly who has to settle for P2 once more, but gets another great corner exit. This time, it all swaps around. Does it? No, it doesn't. Matt Daly still running in P2. It just looks like Alan Matthews' car has the legs on Matt Daly's when we get to the high-speed stuff. We are, of course, an open setup championship. Drivers can chop and change all parameters of their car. There's no limits, pretty much. You can change front wing, gearing, everything on these cars as you see fit, as Matt Daly does have a look down the inside and for the first time gets more than a front axle in front of Alan Matthews. It's now Matt Daly in the lead of this race as we run down through Druids. Up comes the Lodge in just a moment. Alan Matthews has a look around the outside. We can see in the distance there who is going to win out here. It's very close indeed, but it's Matt Daly who heads on to the start-finish straight against Alan Matthews. Now Alan Matthews needs to use that straight line advantage that he has to try and get the car back out in front. He's 2/3 of the way alongside, has the outside for the Old Hall corner, has to go onto the grass. If we had stewards, we'd be looking at that one, but yeah, we don't. Say what you will about it, it makes for some interesting racing, that's for sure. And here we go, down the inside goes Matt Daly. Alan Matthews is our race leader. 1/10 of a second is the gap, and then we have a half a second gap between Miles Davis and Alan Matthews. It is oh so close here. Miles Davis could be playing a really good game here. As we approach half race distance here, very late on the brakes for Matt Daly. There wasn't a gap down the inside, but he positioned the car like there was one, and somehow there wasn't a collision there. Yeah, Miles Davis just needs to lap along with them. Doesn't need to go and do anything brave here. Just needs to poot along in P3, allow these two to battle it out, allow these two to plant themselves in a barrier, as it has looked like they're going to on a few occasions. And it'll be Miles Davis leading this race. We've been looking for that elusive Miles Davis podium so far. 3 rounds in, he hasn't had it yet. 4 races in, and so we completed. I'll try that again. We completed 2 rounds, and we've done 4 races. Miles Davis has been P4 in so many of them. Could this be the one that he gets a podium in? Just have to wait and see. Currently, he's in good standing to do so. I might be looking for more than a podium. Who knows? It's Alan Matthews who leads us 0.2 of a second ahead of Matt Daly. Here we go then, onto the start-finish straight once more. Alan Matthews is just about ahead of Matt Daly, really only a hair ahead as we run through the right-hander of Old Hall. There are very few low-speed corners on this track. You've got Britons, you've got Hislops, and you've got Shell Oils corner as well. Everything else is fast and flowing, and it really does exercise these TCR cars pretty hard. The front wheels are your ones to start giving up. With 12 minutes left to go in this race, they're not going to be showing signs of being completely dead, but in around about 5 to 7 minutes, they might be looking a little bit less than ideal as Alan Matthews goes deep into the corner. Matt Daly goes down the inside, well recovered by Alan Matthews there to catch it on the steering lock there. Here we go, we're nearly 3 wide as we run it into Britons. It's Alan Matthews who was tagged front to rear by Matt Daly. And Matt Daly, I suspect, wasn't quite expecting Alan Matthews to come back over, but then Alan Matthews, no, it's a racing incident either way. There was no major ill effects from it, as we see Miles Davis runs through his lobs here. Matt Daly is in charge of this race. We are side by side on the exit of his lobs as Alan Matthews says, I want to take that position back, thank you very much. And we run up the hill. Here is Miles Davis on the scene as well, ready to try and find a way past. If this track was a little bit wider, I'd wager that it would be himself currently in the lead of this race, but these two battling out in front means that there's just simply no gap for a Juliet to go on through, but there is as they run through his lobs. Sorry, no, it's not. That's Druids. As we run through Druids, Alan Matthews gets a little bit upset. The back end kicks out. He runs wide on the outside. And here, through goes Matt Daly. Here's Miles Davis as well as we run the through lodge. It's a drag race to the start of the next lap. It's Old Hall coming up next. Miles Davis gets clear of Alan Matthews. Then what can Alan Matthews do this time, running on the inside? It's not a position he's been used to running through Old Hall. Nothing he can do. It's Miles Davis now in a P2. Our race being led by the two yellow and red liveried cars there, and I thought there might have been contact. There was a bit of a gap. There hasn't been contact. And now I suspect this battle that was for P1 in this race slowly becomes a battle for P2, as Matt Daly has been somewhat unleashed by getting clear of Alan Matthews. Now, Alan Matthews is much more preoccupied with what Miles Davis is doing as he runs in P2, and Matt Daly now needs to seize this opportunity to just clear away. He obviously took race victory in race 1 as the ominous onlookers have become distinctly 2D. That man's holding his arms up. That must be hurting after a little while. There's a woman there who's just holding a coffin, distinctly uninterested. But we have 10 minutes left on the clock. Matt Daly should be able to break away and cement a bit of a grand slam this race weekend. Pole race 1 victory. Obviously hasn't led every lap because we run reverse grid, so it's not possible. And should, as things stand at least, bring it home on top left of the podium. We have less than 10 minutes to go in this race. Miles Davis running in P2, then we have Alan Matthews in P3. That's followed by Greg Young and Andrew Whitehead. Finds himself in P5 once more. Really needs to nail, or really needs to capitalise on the reverse grid opportunity. It's chaotic on lap 1 for a number of drivers, so unfortunately it didn't quite work out for Andrew. Runs in P5 though, so potentially 2 decent point scoring positions on the cards for Andrew here. As we have a look at P6, it's going to be Jack Oulton, then Colin Knief. What a turnaround in fortunes compared to the start of the season it has been for Colin Knief this evening. Running in P7 at the moment. Nowhere really he can progress to in the final 10 minutes unless he can get past Jack Oulton. Then we have Paul Millman in P8, followed by Andy Webb and then Steve Knight. We didn't actually catch the retirement from Nathan Birch, but Nathan Birch does retire. Every driver gets 1 point if they bring it home in this race. So then, we have less than 10 minutes left on the clock. Let's have a look at how the championship shapes up after race 1, of course. No stewards inquiries to be had after the racing here, so the points are the points after the race finishes, so we can start into the championship even mid-race weekend. It's Colin Knief who still leads this standing with 111 points. To Matt Daly on 101. I remember heading into this weekend when I said this could be a crucial weekend where Matt Daly could make amends for a slightly rocky start in comparison to Colin Knief. Well, as it stands, if the results stay the way that they are, Matt Daly will leapfrog ahead of Colin Knief in the championship standings, and from a 20-point deficit will jump ahead with a few points to his advantage. So well done, Matt Daly, for that one. But then we have Matt Daly will be ahead of Colin Knief, but at the moment it's Colin Knief on 111, Matt Daly on 101. Then we have Greg Young on 71 with Nathan Birch on 48 and Andrew Whitehead on 35 in 5th in the standing. Then we have Alan Matthews in 6th, 30. John Cole with 24, not here this evening, so he is currently equal for points with Miles Davis, but Miles Davis will jump ahead to take 7th after this race because he's actually scored points this evening. Then we have Mike Hilton with 18. Jack Hodson with 16, Andy Craker with 10, Andy Webb with 10, Paul Millman with 5, Alex Smith with 2, and then Steve Knight with 0 at the moment, but will obviously score his maiden points this season by virtue of attrition. Let's have a look then at this battle brewing for P3. Alan Matthews has enjoyed plenty of battling so far this evening and is going to get ready for a little bit more. As we see now, he's defending P3, and what a turnaround of fortunes this past lap has shaped up to be, really. Obviously, he was fighting for the race lead previously, and now he's fighting to stay on the podium as it stands. This is looking very good if you're Miles Davis or Matt Daly, but if you're Alan Matthews, you're now going to enjoy a battle against Greg Young. And I think back to the past few years of touring car action in the AROC Racing Leagues, these two definitely know how to battle each other. They've enjoyed many a race. Donington seems to be a favourite of them. They always go well at Donington. They always go very well at Snetterton together. One of my favourite battles in AROC history was a race-long battle in Julietta's at Snetterton, and it was between Alan Matthews and Greg Young. So we head through the right-hander of Druids, and they are looking poised to potentially have another battle, but it must be said, over the past lap, they have closed up on Miles Davis. We've got over 5 minutes to go in this race. The tyres are going to be a little bit less happy, but the fuel load will be low now at this point. So pace should be there or thereabouts there. It has dropped off ever so slightly. We're in the high 141s on a good lap at this point. So a few tenths has been lost there. That's if you're not Matt Daly, because Matt Daly's gone fastest. He's gone so far. Slow sector 3, but a purple sector 2, personal best sector 1 sees him post a 140.812. So obviously the best of the race so far, and his current pace as well. Alan Matthews is on a charge at the moment as he's being pressured by Greg Young, and he's on a charge because he's trying to take back that P2 from Miles Davis. Miles Davis seemed to have a pretty good rhythm a couple of laps ago, but that has rather waned, I would say, over the past or maybe 2 laps, as he's now feeling the threat from Alan Matthews, from Greg Young as well. What I am sure Miles Davis will be really hoping for is the man here, Andrew Whitehead, is going to be jumping on the scene and being a bit of a thorn in the side, really, for the likes of Alan Matthews and Greg Young. If those two can manage to do that, then what we will see is actually Miles Davis might be given a bit of a breather here, effectively, if we have the likes of Andrew Whitehead putting a bit of pressure on Greg Young and Alan Matthews. If we have a bit of a 3-car battle for P3, what I actually want to see is we have a 4-car battle for P2, but the track's not very good. We might be struggling for that one. It's like less than 5 minutes to go in this race then. And what an evening it has been here at Oulton Park. Big changes in the championship as we get ready to head to round 4. At the end of round 4, at the end of this race, we will mark a quarter championship completion there, as we see a wide run there for Miles Davis as he gets back onto the start-finish straight. He's compromised in terms of overall speed, somehow keeps the nose ahead of Alan Matthews and Greg Young. We head into the old hole right-hander there, and it's a look down the inside for Greg Young, because Alan Matthews once again running deep into the first right-hander on the lap. Miles Davis then is going to have to take a leaf out of Alan Matthews' book and position that Julietta so it is as wide as physically possible, so that there isn't another gap for another Julietta to work its way on past. Side by side then briefly were Alan Matthews and Miles Davis, but it's Miles who wins out at the moment and remains in P2. The number 13 car is contacted quite heavily by Alan Matthews just behind. It is now a quartet battling out for P2. But Alan Matthews was late on the brakes there. I expect Miles to be braking quite as early as he did, and that was huge contact. Both drivers doing well to be pointing in the right direction after that one. No major ill effect as they continue on and get ready to head towards sector 3 in just a few moments. I should add in all of this, because this battle has been shaping up now, as we once again, deja vu, are going to see Steve Knight just in front of them with about 5 minutes to go in the race, and that does mean that there is going to be some lap traffic to negotiate for our battling quartet here as they try and find a way on through. But Matt Daly leads this race now by 9 seconds. Remember when I said he might be released? Well, there we go. He is absolutely released as he tries to find a way on. In fact, has found a way on through past Steve Knight there, and that is unfortunate for Jack Hodson. I don't believe there was no contact between himself and Colin Keefe. That's not true on the board here. That was just an unfortunate incident. Dropping Jack Hodson down to P7, Colin Keefe into P6. But look at the battle we've got shaping up for P2. Matt Daly is clear. He doesn't have anything to worry about in this race, really. Neither does Miles Davis, so to speak. So it's actually a battle for P3 as we see Alan Matthews, Andrew Whitehead and Greg Young are going to be your drivers, squabbling for the final spot on the podium here with just about 3 minutes to go in this race. Separated by around about 3/10 overall, as we see Andrew Whitehead having a quick glance at the run through turn 4 there to see if he can have a run through the outside before we head into the Shell Oils. It's deep into the corner for Alan Matthews once again. This is what we've seen a few times now from Alan Matthews, only this time it does not end well. He carries on running wide, carries on the grass. That allows Andrew Whitehead through. It might very well allow Greg Young through in just a moment. It hasn't. As we head through Britain's, it is going to be Alan Matthews remaining in P4, but Andrew Whitehead all of a sudden this weekend is looking just that little bit brighter for the red and white liveried car there, as we see a podium on the card here for Andrew White, and I believe he has had a few podiums so far this season. He has indeed, because he managed it at Anglesey in round 2. That was his only podium of the season so far, so a driver that did so well in the first half of 2025 hasn't quite shaped up the way you would have wanted so far at the start of this season. So another podium, I suspect, for Andrew Whitehead would be very much welcome for the red and white liveried car. But Matt Daly, 1 minute to go on the clock, as we do now start the penultimate lap of this race, is clear and will be bringing it home for a pole, a race 1 victory, and it's looking like a race 2 victory as well, as we see Miles Davis runs in P2, is clear of Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead seems to have just about built up a few car lengths to the drivers in P4 and P5, and this battle, which originally was for P1, Alan Matthews was defending for P1 only a few laps ago, around about 5 to 10 minutes ago, now finds himself squabbling for P4. Still a few points to be brought home for his troubles there, so still a good run out overall for Alan Matthews, but could have been it wasn't ideal qualifying, it must be said. I mean, we only had 11 cars, so it wasn't an awful qualifying, it was only a couple of rows behind, but Alan Matthews could have maybe hoped for a little bit more. Has had a great run out here, and it certainly provided us plenty of action, so thank you for that one, Alan. I hope you've enjoyed watching along at home, those of you who are, as there's been plenty of action in the midfield in both of these races so far this evening. We have hit 0 seconds on the clock. This is the ultimate lap as Matt Daly is heading up towards Druids in just a moment. 12 seconds is that gap in the race lead, by the way, and we haven't looked at them too much, but there's still plenty of action going on there. Maybe, nope, nothing to see here. Hello, Paul. How are you doing? Yep, get it in reverse, mate. Nope, there we go. Yeah, in reverse. Bye-bye, Paul. Either way, we look on to race 2, P2 here, as the timer, as I say, hits 0. Matt Daly is getting ready to start the final lap of the race in just a couple of seconds. Alan Matthews runs slightly wide through Druids. I suspect the tyres are looking less than responsive at this point. There is Colin Knief running in P6. What a contrast compared to the start of qualifying and even some parts of race 1 as well. We are on the final lap of this race. We'll jump on board with Matt Daly in just a moment, but we're going to carry on looking at this battle between Alan Matthews and Greg Young, as that is going to be Greg Young who navigates around the Old Hall corner just ahead of Alan Matthews. They were so close you couldn't really make out where Alan Matthews was in the scenery there, up on 2 wheels briefly for Alan Matthews, has a look around the outside of Cascades, nowhere he can go just yet, and it's Greg Young remaining in P4 for the time being. Matt Daly's heading through Shell Oils, there's Colin Knief heading into scenery as well. What an eclectic race this has turned out to be on midfield, really providing us some enthralling action as we run through the Shell Oils right-handed banked corner here at Oulton Park. It's looking a little bit more spaced out than it has on a number of occasions so far this race weekend. But this is part of the reason, hello Ominous on, because that man in the red shirt is, I didn't spot him before, because that man's just got his hands in his pockets there. As I say, when we get to Silverstone GP, they're really scary then. I can't commentate with them. It's actually a problem. Either way, these 4 drivers have certainly put on a show for us, and that's why we do like heading back to these traditional British circuits. The F1 venues were great. It was great to follow along with the Formula 1 calendar, but there's something about the circuits like your Cadwell, like your Thruxton, like your Oulton Parks are really enjoyable to go racing on. But we do jump on board with Matt Daly as he heads around the Lodge corner for one last time this evening over the Deer Leap, and with little challenge, it's Matt Daly who takes race 2 victory. Congratulations, Matt. A double race victory as he turns around his championship early on in the season. This is exactly the weekend that he needed. Exactly, the stars really did align for him, and Matt Daly very happy with that, I'm sure. Miles Davis then for his maiden podium with the AROC Racing Leagues brings it home in P2. Congratulations, Miles. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more to come from that one there, as we have Andrew Whitehead bringing home P3. Bit of a turnaround in his race weekend as it turns out. Then we have Greg Young in P4, Alan Matthews P5, followed by Colin Knief. What an unfortunate race 2 for Colin there. Loses out on the championship lead, as I say. We do head to Knock Hill in a fortnight's time in these cars. Then we have Jack Cotton bringing it home in P7. Andy Webb will be classified P8. Paul Millman P9, and Steve Knight will be classified P10 as well. But what a thoroughly enjoyable weekend's worth of racing here at Oulton Park. Hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed commentating. We'll catch you in a week's time. Oh, that's an unfortunate run through Shell Oils for Greg Young. Hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed commentating. We'll catch you in a week's time as we head back to Knock Hill in our GTA 1750s. From me,